What did you learn embarrassingly late? When I was 20, I was presented with a really wonderful promotion. It required me to fly to a nearby state for a week of training. I was super ecstatic about the whole thing, until I remembered a friend of mine complaining about her struggles with getting a passport. So, I promptly declined the promotion. My superiors were really stumped as to why I turned down the promotion. Unfortunately, I don't have a passport. Manager: boring berry. Me: no, I have not. Manager: you don't need a passport to fly within the country. And then it hit me, my friend was going to Mexico. I was just going to a neighboring state. Once the realization hit, my superiors all erupted in laughter. The story itself followed me when I went to training. My trainer personally greeted me and asked me if I had any difficulties getting a passport before laughing. You know when the doctor hits your knee to check your reflexes? I honestly thought you were supposed to kick your leg up high, like you felt it and you kick. It wasn't until I was 23 and moved to another country and had to do a physical that the doctor was like, "What are you doing?" Thought an orgasm and an organism were the same thing. Gave an entire speech to my class at 13 years old. First month at a new school, about how I wanted to be a marine biologist and work with marine orgasms. Everyone was laughing and I didn't know why. The teacher didn't say anything, just laughed along as well. A girl I just made friends with had to fill me in after class. Turns out, they are definitely not the same thing. Didn't learn until I was 20 what meat and dark meat come from the same chicken. That my mom pronounces bagels as beagles on purpose to mess with me. English is her second language, so I just always assumed that she didn't know the right pronunciation. I was in my late 20s before I realized it. I should have known. It's definitely something she would do. That you can actually perform maintenance on a lawnmower, i.e., oil changes, and not just but a new one every few years. I moved a lot growing up and as a result we didn't always hang on to larger appliances, so I was like 21 before I learned lawnmowers aren't basically disposable. Brown noses are brown from kissing people's butts. You know, like they're covered in shit. I was in my late 20s when I put that one together. Martha's Vineyard isn't just some land that rich people went to that was owned by Martha Stewart. For anyone who is also just learning this, Martha's Vineyard is an island near Massachusetts. Ambulances don't patrol around like police cars, but in some big cities they do hang around in certain areas that are known to be accident prone during rush hour. Plus tow trucks. I was circumcised. I never knew I was circumcised until I went to the pediatrician and my mom told the pediatrician that I was circumcised. Glass objects should not be put on the stove. Guess how I learned that? Not to be stereotypical or anything, but the gold is super appreciated. Yup, I learned that with some Pyrex. It said oven safe, so I assumed that also meant stovetop safe. It doesn't. Pickles are pickled cucumbers. Look me over 30 years to figure that one out. Cucumbers are just pre-pickles. I thought buffaloes were birds, and buffalo wings were from said birds. Mine was the opposite, thought buffalo wings were from a normal buffalo until like age 17. That guys didn't have to squeeze their dicks to get their pee out. It's like milk in a cow. The proper way to say mythology. It was my favorite subject and I talked about it all the time and not one person told me it wasn't mythology. Found out when my teacher corrected something I read out loud in English class as a senior in HS. I still cringe. That my cat didn't go back to the pet store when it was sick. I had even heard all the jokes about pets going to the farm. Still didn't strike me till way too late. When I was in 2nd grade, my hamster died. I wanted to hold a funeral, naturally. Mom insisted on sending him off for an autopsy first. We watched a lot of medical shows, so I was super understanding of why this was necessary. Since the closest facility for hamster autopsies was quite far away, she would send him out and they would bury him for me, since the return shipping would be traumatic to his poor little hamster remains. After about 6 months of waiting for the autopsy report to come in the mail, I insisted she call and check back in. She said they were working on the report. These things just take time. In 10th grade it hit me. Vagina and pee hole are separated. I'm a girl and I only learned this when I was like 13. I was amazed I didn't have to take out a tampon every time I needed to pee. That IHOP is the International House of Pancakes. I never made the connection that they were the same thing, so until recently I thought the International House of Pancakes was like a Hall of Fame type museum restaurant for pancakes. I'm old. Originally IHOP literally had international pancakes on their menu, and about 20 flavors of syrup on each table on a carousel. That it's pay-per-view not pay-per-view. I thought Gwen Stefani's name was Gwen Stefania until I was like 20 lol. Ellen DeGeneres. Jerry Falwell called her Ellen DeGenerate after she came out. She was amused instead of offended. He really said that? I haven't heard that since grade school. When I was little, my dad told me the big cooling towers that are often found beside electricity generating plants were in fact cloud machines, and the prime minister of the day had a switch on his desk to turn the big machine on when it got too hot. This made complete sense to me, as they did produce big clouds of white cumulus-like exhaust when operating. Fast forward to when I was around 11 years ago, and the teacher asks if anyone knows why some days are dry and some days it rains, some days have blue sky and some days have clouds. Of course, at the mention of clouds I knew immediately where clouds come from and stuck my hand up to tell everyone about the Prime Minister and the cloud machines. Luckily the teacher picked someone else for the answer, and I was most confused to hear someone go on about evaporation and rainfall and so on. That several does not in fact mean 7. When Tails was introduced in Sonic 2, I thought it was cute that his real name was Miles Prower and his nickname was Tails. 25 years later, I was thinking about it and said to myself, Miles Prower. Miles per hour. Oh my god. I just never connected the dots before. That Washington D.C. wasn't in the state of Washington. As a non-American, that is annoying. Also Kansas versus Arkansas. That I was in fact not missing a testicle. Thought there was supposed to be 3 until I was like 14 years old. It's hard to explain this one, and I can't Google it to find pictures. Everyone has bought a tube of cream at some point, antiseptic, steroid, eczema, for example. Typically, these tubes of cream have a seal, and I used to remove the lid and break the seal by finding anything sharp and pointy nearby. Pen maybe. It took my 23 years to realize that the pointy end in the center of the lid has a purpose. I learned how to swallow pills at 26. Always had a problem trying to gulp them down, and they just kept swimming around in my mouth. Up until then I always had to mush them up and just bear with the bitterness whenever I was sick. That the ribs my siblings and I ate as kids were not from velociraptors. My dad and mom had always called them velociraptor ribs for some reason, and I guess we just figured our dad was so big and awesome that it made sense that he would often go out and kill dinosaurs for us to eat. I don't think I found out until I was in junior high that they were just regular ribs. Your dad is a fucking legend for that lie. That limes weren't unripe lemons. Carrot fucking what? Now I'm someone who's very uptight about sex/nudity around my parents. Imagine Hank Hill hearing his mom talk about sex. He'd say bah. It was the late 90s, I was 15, Limp Bizkit was all the rage. To my knowledge my mom had never heard Limp Bizkit. I didn't understand what the song was about. I wasn't prepared for what followed. I asked, "Hey mom?" "Yes." "What does the word nookie mean?" "It means an abundance of mindless repetitive sex. Oh. And I've never felt more cringe than in that moment. That was the day I learned to always use a dictionary first. Rottweilers are not just fat Dobermans. That you're supposed to get anesthesia when you get your split chin stitched. When I was in grade school, 4th grade, 8 years old, I propped myself up between 2 tables and swung my legs back and forth. No idea how it happened, but I ended up falling and splitting my chin open. Apparently school couldn't reach my mom and called my dad. Parents were divorced. Dad was an ob/gyn. He took me to the hospital and put stitches in my chin without giving me anything for the pain. I remember crying and screaming the whole time. He said shit like, "Should I put another stitch here?" And needless to say, I sobbed no. he put it, of course. Afterwards, the nurse gave me 3 lollipops because I was a good girl. I knew I wasn't a good girl because I bawled so much. Somehow I rationalized that dear old dad didn't give me anesthesia because you're not supposed to when it's an injury on the chin. It wasn't until college, when someone talked about his experience with getting his chin stitched, that I realized that my dad was a fucking asshole. That Bill Nye and Bill Nye are separate people. Junior year of college. Orgasms exist. I'm sorry. There are races of Mennonites and Amish people other than white. I grew up in a small city and was pretty sheltered. This is the first time hearing of this. That you don't pronounce the A in cocoa. I'd rather say cacao. I didn't know that women could get pregnant without experiencing an orgasm. I learned that this year. At age 26. I'm gay and never really considered it. So dumb. There would be exactly 6 people on Earth if that was the case. How to figure out my age. Before I was trying to remember all my birthdays until I was told I could just do the math. Edit, I got onto Reddit to see my karma jump from 2 digits to 4. I'm lucky and born in 2000 so I never have to remember. Edit, I feel like the obligatory thanks for the silver kind stranger is in order. Riding a bicycle. I learnt it at 18. My parents believed in an astrologer who told them that I would have a terrible accident when I drive or ride. So I had to learn bicycle secretly from a friend. Edit, I did get into an accident but who doesn't? I love my parents and am super happy with my childhood. This is the only thing I had to keep up with. Now they see the logic and risk associated with the things I do and always support me. I'm Indian. I don't want to insult your parents but holy hell are they dumb. What Genuine's pony is actually about. On that note, I didn't realize a pony wasn't just a baby horse, it's a breed. Foal was what I did not know. I saw mommy kissing Santa Claus. Santa Claus is the dad. As a child, I just assumed that mom was getting down with Santa. That Martin Luther King Jr. was never president. I found out I was wrong when Obama became president. When I was in 4th grade I was in love with Chris Brown. He was 16. I told my mom when I was 16 we would start dating. She proceeded to inform me that when I was 16 he would no longer be 16. That's when I realized everyone was also getting older, not just me lol. Kanga and Roo from Winnie the Pooh put together makes kangaroo. Source? The expression you can't have your cake and eat it too. I'm like, what? Of course you can eat your cake if you have it. WTF are all these people talking about? Took me till my 20s to figure out it was actually meaning you can't both have the cake on the counter and have eaten it. That it's Neapolitan, not Napoleon. Sweet peppers have 3 steps, green, yellow and red. Always thought that sweet peppers exist in 3 different tastes but it is the same species lol. That truffles are a mushroom as well as a chocolate. When people talked about sending pigs in the forest to hunt for truffles I thought they buried chocolates in there to teach pigs how to dig food up. I was 21. Deja vu phenomenon is common for all people. Until 19 years old I believed that I am the only one who experiences glimpses of events I have already lived. I realized my mistake when I shared this with my girlfriend and she stared at me, cringy expression on her face, didn't say a word. I was confused so I looked it up the day after and was shocked to see deja vu is fairly common. I felt embarrassed. Look up main character syndrome. Pilot and co-pilot actually has the same hierarchy. I thought that co-pilot is some kind of assistant to the pilot. I didn't expect this to blow up, but thanks for the insight. I guess to clarify my first statement, I thought that co-pilot will be promoted to be the pilot. The revelation that I experienced was when both of the pilot and co-pilot of my flight address themselves as captain. They both can have the same rank. The captain and first officer are often thought of as pilot and co-pilot. While not technically wrong, their duties per leg boil down to who is pilot flying and pilot monitoring. Both pilots will take turns performing different roles, but also have their permanent responsibilities, such as the captain being the final authority for all decision making. At #X200B, in case anyone was wondering.